Today, I'm going to be going over how you can invest in real estate if you only have $100,000. Now, don't take this $100,000 at face value. It might be 50,000, 25,000, 60,000, 200,000, whatever number you may have. You can use these different strategies in order to invest in commercial real estate with less money down than you might typically think you need. There's this misconception in commercial real estate that you need so much money to invest in commercial real estate. And it's not necessarily true. You don't need millions to invest in commercial real estate. There are different ways that you can invest in commercial real estate with less money. And we're going to be going over those. So you don't need $1 million+ to invest in commercial real estate. There are plenty of small commercial properties out there and different strategies you can do to get into commercial deals with less. So these are the three ways I'd put your smaller balance to work. Okay. Number one, you buy a small deal. And I'm going to go over examples. There are commercial properties, whether it's small multifamily or retail or industrial, that you can get into for a really small price. And I'm going to go over an example that I bought. Number two, you can use creative financing. You can balance whether it's seller financing, whether it's a combination of subject to, whether it's stacking bank financing. I'll go over all that on how to get into a deal with creative financing. And then lastly, you can partner with other investors, group together a couple of investors that each have 100,000 and be able to take something down that's bigger. So first, buy a small commercial property by yourself. When I first got started in commercial real estate, when I was switching out of apartments, I went out and I bought a small strip center. And you can do this with small strip centers. You can do this with small apartment buildings. I did the same thing with duplexes, triplexes, quads. Some people buy small warehouses, small bay industrial, mixed use. There are smaller commercial properties out there that you can go out and buy that are under 400,000. Now, why 400,000? Because if you're going to lever your 100,000 on a 75% LTV, should be able to get about a $400,000 property. So this is a typical deal, finance at 75%. Let's say the deal's 350,000. You're going to put 25% down, and then you're going to take a loan for 262,500. Now this is important. Do not put your entire 100,000 as the down payment. You're going to need reserves, closing costs, repairs, tenant improvements, unexpected stuff. Life happens. Do not, and I've made this mistake, so I'm speaking out of experience. Do not put your entire capital as your down payment, because when you close, stuff is inevitably going to happen in which you won't have the money. And don't try to use cash flow in order to fix this and fix that and fix that. It could work to a certain degree, but always make sure you have reserves in case things go south, and they will go south. So you need to make sure you're prepared. This is a real example of a 3-unit strip center I purchased in Wichita, Kansas. And you can look this up. Like, this is all public record. I think Kansas might be a non-disclosure state. I'm not sure, but you can see that I purchased this property, purchased it for $280,000. I put 70,000 down, traditional bank financing, put 70,000 down, and I put 15,000 renovations. As you can see, I redid the parking lot, I painted the building, I added some potted plants, as you can see here. I made the building look better by the time it's done. 3-unit strip center, I only put 70,000 down, 15,000 in repairs. Super light work. Improved it, and then I raised rents. A lot of the tenants were on gross rents. I converted them to triple nets. 3 tenants were all on gross rents, converted them to triple nets. And then I sold the building exactly 12 months and 4 days later for $400,000. The reason I waited till 12 months, even though I might have been able to sell it sooner, was because I wanted the long-term capital gain stacks instead of the short-term capital gain stacks. Even though at the end I was able to 1031 it, so I didn't have to worry about that. But in the event that I wasn't going to be able to 1031 it, I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to get hit with short-term capital gain stacks. So I made $100,000 in profit by investing $85,000 into this deal. I got my 85,000 back and another 100 on top of it. So these deals are doable in 12 months. That was more than I was making at my W-2 at the time. So these deals are out there and they're doable. Okay. So what are the downsides to this strategy of just like, okay, I have 100 grand, I'm going to look for small commercial deals? The first downside is they're harder to find. Okay. Most commercial properties are in, the million+ range. That's just the reality of the industry. Okay. They're not like residential homes where they all sit, there's an average for the area, and you can, they all sit between a few $100,000 depending on your market. Commercial properties tend to be more expensive. So there's less of them. Second one is there's more competition. More investors can afford $300,000 properties than investors that can afford a $3 million properties. You're going to face more competition. You're going to face competition from the local business owner or a local accountant or doctor that is a decent earning professional and is able to save some money on the side in order to go after deals like this in order to continue building their wealth. So there's more competition at this end, as well as there's less deals. So as you can see, when you have more competition and less deals, they tend to go pretty fast. Okay, strategy number 2 is creative financing. This is one that gets a lot of hype, and I've done it before, so it is doable, but it gets a lot of hype. So you got to be careful because there are a lot of pitfalls that come with creative financing, but let's go over how it's done. So let's say the most common ways the seller finances some or all of the deal. So let's say a property is 500,000. You tell the seller, hey, carry 450 at whatever interest rate. There's no rules. You create the rules with the seller. So you could do 0 interest rate. You could do 5%, 10%. You negotiate it. I've heard people that say, hey, carry the full 500 down and give me 6 months to start paying you because I need to do this. I need to repair this and get tenants in here and here. So you can get really creative with these. There's no rules with it. But in this example, let's say, it's $500,000 deal. If you went to a bank, they'd require about $125,000 down. But if you get seller financing, you get them to carry the 450. You only have to bring 50,000 down. So instead of using a bank, you use the seller. They essentially become the bank. So you don't need to bring the entire down payment. The seller, you can control how much you bring down based on your ability to negotiate with the seller. Now, there are other options. You can take over the seller's loan. If the seller has a big loan, you can take it over and start making the payments for them. Then it gets tricky with some due on sales clause. Pace Morby has a whole thing where he goes over exactly how to do this. Some people love it. Some people say it's unethical, or some people even say it's illegal. So it's certainly a gray area, but people are doing it every day and it's doable. So, and you can stack it. You don't only have to do one. For example, there's a strategy that people do where they get a bank loan for 75%, and then they get a seller to carry part of the down payment, and then the seller brings the rest. So back to the $500,000 property example, you get a bank loan for 75%. So you get a bank loan for $375,000, and that 125 you have to bring to the table. You can have the seller carry 75 of it, and then you bring 50. So the structure can vary wildly based on what you're able to negotiate with the seller. The problem is there's a lot of banks aren't okay with there being a second on the property. So in many cases, you have to get the seller to carry a second that's not secured by the property, maybe secured by another asset, or you have to find a bank that's okay with there being a second loan on the property, which can be tricky. But in both these situations, you only brought $50,000 to the table on a $500,000 deal, which normally if you go to a bank, get traditional financing, you're going to have to bring $125,000 to the table. So it can vary. Now, creative financing works best with the right seller. So you want a seller that, if you're going to do seller financing, you want a seller that owns the property free and clear, or has a very small mortgage that you can pay it off with your down payment. They want steady monthly income. They want to spread out their tax liability, which is a very common strategy or a very common reason on why sellers accept seller financing. They don't want to pay all the taxes up front. Or maybe the property's been sitting on the market for a long time. That's something I've been doing recently, where I call brokers and I say, hey, this property's been sitting on the market for 300 days. Is the seller open to creative financing or carrying the note or something like that? So you just want someone that's motivated, whether it's been sitting on the market for a long time, whether the real estate's really distressed and they're not going to be able to sell it very quickly, or you want a seller that has a high mortgage. If the property's underwater or the mortgage is the same as the value of the property, so if the seller sells it, he's going to have to pay all these closing costs and agents and all that, and he's actually going to be underwater, that's when you can go for subject to and say, I'll take over the mortgage, I'll make the payments, and you transfer ownership of the property to me. Now, what are the risks? The first one is finding a willing seller to carry the note or do subject to is hard. Most sellers won't agree. They want to sell the property outright, pay off their mortgage if they have one, or just get all the money for the property all at once. It's also high leverage. And I don't feel like this is talked about enough. If you finance a property 90 to 100% of the value, the monthly payments get heavy, especially if you go through this strategy. Now you have a monthly payment to the seller and you have a monthly payment to the bank. So those on top of each other, you need to make sure that the property can carry it, or you have enough reserves on top of this 50,000 in order to make these two payments while you stabilize the property and increase its revenue. Okay, so it is a higher risk strategy. Now, just because you can buy with low money down doesn't mean you should. The numbers still have to work. You have to be able to increase the property's income enough to cover both the debt service on the bank loan and the seller carrying the note. Okay. Strategy number 3, partner with other investors. And this is something I did a lot in my career in order to take down deals. Can't tell you how many times I found a property, the numbers were great, but I only had half the money needed to take it down. Okay. There's a couple ways to do this. You can build your own partnership. So, you have 100 grand and you find three other investors that also have 100 grand. And then now you guys have 400 grand altogether. And then with financing, you could take down a deal at about the $1.5 million purchase price with traditional financing. And this is something I've done fairly often because when I look for deals, I don't just look at my price range because if I find it's really hard to find good deals. So find opportunity that's out of reach. I reach out to some of the people in my network that I know that are also interested in commercial real estate. We work together and we are able to take down bigger deals. So larger properties typically mean better tenants, better locations, more units, which diversifies the income and more upside. And there's just more options. Like we said earlier, with smaller deals, there's more competition and there's more buyers and there's less of them because commercial property, most commercial property is in the million plus range. So one option is to build a partnership with other investors that also have some capital. It doesn't have to be, the same all the way across. It could be like less. Maybe you have 25 and another investor with 200, another one with 100, another one with 50, whatever the structure may be. And you can figure out how to structure it, who's going to do what. Now, keep in mind, obviously, I'm not an attorney. I'm a real estate investor. So if one of the investors is not doing anything except putting capital, then you have to structure it differently. Now it's considered a syndication. You have to file with the SEC for one of the exemptions. And, there's extra steps you have to take if one of the investors are just putting money in. If all the investors are putting money in and participating in the deal, then you can go ahead and do this and build your own partnership. Next is to invest as a limited partner in a syndication. Now, I'm a real estate general partner, so I run syndication. So if an investor comes to me and goes like, "Hey, I have 50,000, but I really don't have the capacity to go after the deal and stabilize it and find tenants and all that. Here's 50,000, go and invest it in one of your deals." Then this is this structure. It's a syndication. And you could also do a syndication. You could do a fund. You can structure it how you want. Best to speak with an attorney about the best way to structure a deal. So you have in a syndication, you have a general partnership and a limited partner. The general partner finds the property, negotiates the deal, secures the financing, typically guarantees the financing if necessary, manages the business plan, stabilizes it, finds the tenants, makes the deal worth more, works on the exit. The limited partner invests the capital and gets a percentage of the upside, gets a percentage of the monthly revenue, and has very little, pretty much no day-to-day operation involvement in the operations. They just put their money in. The GP then takes it and invests it in a deal. So that's option number 3, is to either group a bunch of investors together and go after a deal, or give your money to a general partner so that he can go after the deal, he or she can go after the deal, take it down, and execute the business plan. So what's the problem with being an LP? Number one is you share in the upside. So if you're buying with other investors or you're buying with a GP, you obviously don't own 100% of the deal. You have to split control with the other investors, or you're giving up control pretty much in its entirety to the GP. Okay. In a syndication, there's fees. There's an acquisition fee. Sometimes there's an asset management fee. There's a disposition fee. So you're paying for the expertise of the GP through these fees. You're splitting the profits on typically the upside. You're splitting that with the general partner. So even though you're able to access the expertise of someone that typically knows what they're doing, you have to pay for it. There's fees that are involved. And number 3, which is a big one, is you're betting on that operator. If you're doing the syndication model, you have to trust that the GP that you're putting your capital with is actually going to be able to execute the business plan. So you have to look at the track record. You have to understand the underwriting, the leverage, what their plan is, and what exactly is the deal they're going to go after. So this is the strategy that a lot of people go after when they have limited capital, but they need to be able to trust the general partnership, the GP, because they could get stung if this person doesn't know what they're doing, buys a property they shouldn't buy, and the deal goes south. You could lose money as a limited partner. So you need to be very careful when you're doing this strategy. So how these strategies stack up. So if you buy a small deal, you have by yourself, you buy a small deal, you have high control, but it's a lot of work. You have to run the deal yourself completely, but you have low buying power, and the difficulty overall, I'll give it like a medium. Okay. Creative finance, control is high, the effort's high because you have to, find the right seller that's going to work with seller financing or subject to, or any of the other creative financing strategy. Your buying power is high because you're able to go after bigger deals if you structure it right. But the difficulty is also high. Again, finding a seller that's okay with creative financing can be quite tricky. Now, when it comes to A partnership or a syndication, your control is lower because you're either splitting ownership with other people in which they all have a say in it, or you're giving control to the GP and trust that they're going to be able to execute the business plan. The effort is lower because you're either splitting all the work or you're handing the work off to the GP. Your buying power is higher. You're able to get into more deals, and the difficulty is lower. You just have to find a GP that you trust, that you believe is going to be able to execute the business plan. You give them the capital, they go and execute the business plan, or you're splitting the work with a handful of other investors in order to take down the deal, and you guys can split the work together accordingly. That's how these three strategies stack up. So which one would I actually choose? Number one, if you have the time and capacity and you're willing to go in and really learn the business, finding a small deal is the way to go. Find something small, learn on it. You might not make a bunch of money on your first deal, but you'll understand how it works, how to go into escrow, how to find tenants, leasing, renovations. You'll get your reps in and you'll become a better investor. If you can't find one, again, if you have capacity, but you can't find a small deal, or you find opportunity in the bigger deal space, that's when you want to get into creative financing. Okay, I want to get into bigger deals. How can I structure it in which I'm able to get into these deals, whether it's seller financing, subject to, or any of the other creative financing strategies? Number three, if you don't have the time to really learn how to run a real estate deal, find tenants, do renovations, your next best option after that is to partner with someone, either partner with other investors that know what they're doing, or give your capital to a general partner, a GP that's going to go after the deal, take it down, and just send you updates every month on how the deal is performing. So it really depends on what your situation is. If you have the time and energy to invest, go out, find your own deal, or find a creative financing deal to take down. If you don't have the capacity, the time, or don't have experience, and you're trying to take down something bigger, you want to get into the bigger, more stable deals, that's when you want to partner with either other investors or the general partner that's going to take the capital and invest it for you in one of their deals. So depending on your situation, choose one of the three and go out and move forward. Again, I'm going to reiterate, never invest the entire 100,000 or whatever balance you have to invest. Why? Because there's going to be all these things that could go wrong that will happen. And when they happen, you need to be prepared. Roof repairs, HVAC problems, vacancy, tenant improvements, leasing, legal expenses, insurance, property taxes. Obviously, some of these can be mitigated through triple net leases, but you need to make sure that if you're going to go after a deal, do not use your entire reserves, do not use your entire balance as the down payment, because stuff will come up that will require additional capital. And if you don't have it, you're going to be in a situation, you're going to be a distressed situation in which you have a deal but don't have the capital to take it to the finish line. Okay? So yes, you can invest in commercial real estate with not a lot of money, specifically $100,000. You could buy a smaller deal, use creative financing, or pool your capital with other investors, or give it to a syndicator in order to go after bigger deals. Okay, so you need enough capital plus the right deal plus the right financing structure. Once you complete your first deal, the second one becomes much easier. The third one becomes much easier. Or if you're investing with someone, once you find the right operator, it becomes so much easier to give them the capital and just be able to trust that they're going to go out and take down deals. So if you want to see the deals that I'm buying, underwriting and operating, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I share my wins, my mistakes, my losses, the actual numbers behind the different deals that I'm taking down, so you can, pick up knowledge from here and be able to go apply it in your own deals down the road. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to go out there and take down your own deals and start, building your own portfolio. If you guys want to follow along, number one, be sure to subscribe. Number two, join the school community in the description below. There is where we really dive into more deals. And if you have a specific question about a deal you're looking at or things like that, you can drop it in the school community and I'll get back to you on my honest feedback on the situation you're dealing with or the deal. And be sure to check out our website in the description below. Anyway, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll be sure to catch you guys on the next one.